This is Grapplers Talk.
What is up, fans of Grapplers Talk? This is Dave coming at you with another episode each and every week. Thank you to the fans for downloading and tuning into the podcast. I truly appreciate all the love and support we get out there. It means the world to me that people are downloading and people are listening. And I'm joined today on the podcast by an awesome competitor. And before I introduce him, I first off just got to say thank you to our partners out there over at Butterfly X, making some of the most awesome rash guards out there. I just love their gear. It's great. If you're an academy owner and you need help getting rash guards, getting all that stuff dialed in, look no further than Butterfly X. They will help you out. Great pricing, great product. Go to their website, use code word Grapplers Talk 10, and you'll get 10% off of your order over there. Check them out on Instagram, give them a follow, and help them out in growing their brand and their product. They're doing great out there in the Texas area and trying to spread their brand all over the country. So, thank you to our partners over there, and also thank you to our partners over at Spar Bar Soap, providing some of the best after training soap on the market. Try out all their different scents; they're all really, really good. You can't go wrong using Spar Bar Soap. Go to their website, use code word Grapplers Talk, and you'll get 10% off of your order over there. And thank you again to all of our partners. Thank you again to the fans for listening. I'm joined today by a awesome competitor, and I've been trying to set up this interview for quite some time. I'm glad it finally worked out for us. And I'm joined today by none other than David Mitchell on the podcast. Man, thank you and welcome to Grapplers Talk.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and pleasure. Hopefully, we have a good conversation.
Yeah, man. I just want to get to know you a little bit better. I want to hear how you got started into jujitsu, how you even got started, if you wrestled or anything like that. Who recruited you? What was your first couple training experiences like?
Oh man. Back in what was it, sixth grade is when I started wrestling. I did sixth and eighth grade. One of my best friends from way back in the day, Sean Verplank. I haven't seen him in a while, but he was into wrestling with his dad and stuff, and I tried it out. I used to play a lot of sports. Baseball, basketball, the whole traditional stuff. And I feel like I got a little unlucky and I was just always on like the worst team. Um, I mean, like my baseball team, we didn't win a single game like the 2 years that I played. And they're supposed to be like somewhat even. And I was like, this kind of sucks. And not to, I wasn't like good or anything, but I I liked wrestling in that it was, of course, a team sport and you're really reliant on your training partners and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like when you go out there, it's you versus your
Yeah.
opponent, you versus you, but also your opponent. And I was able to find some success even if my team wasn't the greatest and stuff. So started doing that a little bit in junior high. With like okay success, but nothing that much. There's mostly just dual meets and like one tournament at the end of the year. And then in high school, I started taking a little bit more seriously. I was living up in Twain Harte, Sugar Pine up in Twain Harte. I went to Sonora High School for 1 year, and then I moved down to the mountains of Santa Cruz. Went to San Lorenzo Valley High School, where I wrestled there, and I took it very seriously and had a pretty good run. Nothing incredible, but I made state 2 times. Didn't place either time, but I was doing a lot of freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling on the off season. I would enter. I would go by myself. I would enter in freestyle for the high school like senior Greco-Roman, and then I'd do the open freestyle and Greco. And so most weekends, I mean the freestyle season is a couple months, 2 or 3 months long. Every weekend I was traveling and going places. I'd probably get like 10 to 16 matches a day. I remember one tournament in particular. It was David Mitchell, you're on map 3, and I'm in the match right now. And then they're on map 2, and I'm just running back and forth. And I think I had 6 back-to-back matches, just boom, 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 boom. And that was a lot of fun. Cut my teeth a lot in competition.
Yeah.
Wish I would have known a lot more about having water and food and all these other things to have. And then I went to college at UC Davis and I started wrestling there, but life and other things got in the way. So I only really did like one, like half of a season there, and then took a large break uh, for about 7 or so years. And I didn't really do much of anything. I started getting back into hockey um, and then finally I graduated. It took me a while to graduate. Took me almost 8 years between like taking some breaks and everything else like that, and paying for my own way for the most part. And then I came back down to the South Bay, which is where I was originally from, and I started helping out with a local high school. Became a friend of mine, and I started helping out with the wrestling program at AKA Sunnyvale. And this is over 12 years ago now. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for about 12 and a half years. And then like wrestling with high schoolers and stuff like that. It's like kind of harder on your body, and like I was good enough where I can just kind of manhandle wrestlers even if they were like pretty good. But I was just looking for more working out, and the main head coach at the school suggested I try jujitsu, and I was like, let's try on these pajamas, see how it goes. And it was fun right away. There's like of course, everyone runs through like some of the bad habits, especially if you're a wrestler or whatnot,
Right.
of like, just getting triangled and armbarred and whatnot. But I mean, I'm very fortunate. Like from the get-go, I was very competitive right away. And I'm a very fast learner. There's a concept called like one shot or few shot learning, and a couple times and I usually will internalize it, and my progress was very rapid. And so I started in late May of 2013. I was just about to turn 28, so like late starter for jujitsu, but I did have obviously some wrestling background.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started competing 1 month later, a couple local tournaments, and I won the U.S. Open as a white belt after about 4 or so months of training. Had 6 matches, all 6 submissions, and then I got my blue belt like 5 months in, and then I was a pretty rapid pace, and then I got my black belt at about 6.5 years in, and so now I'm second degree black belt, and almost at that halfway point where I've been a black belt as long halfway as I've been
Yeah.
training. So I guess that's the shortened version of my travels.
So we've been having a couple technical difficulties here, so we're jumping back into this. Dave, talk about those early days and transitioning into jujitsu. What was probably your biggest struggle in those first early days?
Yeah. I think some of the biggest things were just figuring out how to apply the things that I was already naturally, maybe not naturally, but I've already honed from my wrestling skills, and like learning how to um unlearn some of the things that were really successful there. I think, every wrestler, or not every, but most wrestlers, they tend to push forward and have that grind mentality of, not really, we're just gonna headbutt and see who can last longer. And
Yeah.
so some of it was like trying to unlearn a little bit of that, and then just being comfortable on my back. That took a little bit of time. It took a few months to even be open to that. And so I think a lot of it is just like being back into being ready to be uncomfortable, and then learning how to take some of my like preconceived notions around like what could or should happen. And like nowadays I see it all the time. It's like, oh, but scooters, they don't know how to do jujitsu and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but also, like, if they don't let you get a takedown, you still have to pass their guard. You still have to
Yeah.
do jujitsu. That's a lot of jujitsu is that. And so I don't get the very strong opinions against guard pullers or guard sitters. I certainly can wrestle. I certainly can pass, but the rules dictate that being a guard player is more advantageous most of the time, and candidly, it's less energy expenditure. So when you are training as infrequently as I am on a regular basis, it's a little bit easier to be able to manage there. So I think from the beginning, it was just like grind and smash and just implement my will. And I think that there's certainly some aspects to that's important, but it was learning when to try to go around the obstacle rather than just try to go through it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other like really, really big like meta concepts that even took me a long time, even into like blue and purple belt, is learning how to modulate. For so much of my life in wrestling, it was like on or off. And that's kind of like some of my, some of my stuff with my own mental whatnot is like, I'm either on or I'm not. And when I was doing wrestling, it was like, okay, like we're wrestling, we're going all out, we're going to war, and you kind of have to. But in jujitsu, the beautiful thing about jujitsu is that you have so many people from so many different walks of life, and you have young unemployed kids that are maybe doing part-time school, and you have 50-year-old dads that are just trying to have
Yeah.
fun, and tech bros, and all like just so many walks of life, and everyone's goal of why they're training is a little bit different, and learning how to like flow roll and how to get the most from each roll without just like, oh, I got to smash them as hard as I can. That took a long time to be able to learn. And I think that's when I did start to learn that's where I really sped up my learning process. It doesn't mean I don't, put the hammer down, because that's important to be able to do in competition. But I think that's probably the thing I struggled with the most, and honestly didn't get till much later, is having more nuance to how much energy expenditure I had, and taking care of my training partners. I was never one to like injure my training partners that much, besides their pride, or I said a couple of my training partners would be like, I was like getting hit by a freight train. Like never injuries, but like you knew you were in for it when we were going, whether they won or not. It was going to be a battle, and that's what I was like when I was doing wrestling. It was like I always had the mentality of, you might win this round, but if you pull me again in a tournament, you're gonna be like, damn it, not again,
Yeah.
because whether I'm up by 9 points or down by 9 points, I'm coming at you hard from start to finish. And I learned that in training, you don't always have to do that. And it's actually much more to your and your training partner's benefit to learn to modulate.
Yeah. No, that's so wise. And I mean, if the white belts out there aren't listening to that, they should be, because that's some knowledge, and that's going to keep you on the mats. I try to tell my students all the time, you want to stay on the mats no matter what. So that's why those training sessions have to be important. You have to be able to modulate during them, and tone down things sometimes when you're injured, right? You don't want to make things worse. You got to train through it, but you got to adapt your training style sometimes. But whatever keeps you on the mats is the most important thing. The moment you take long periods of time away from it, I feel like is when the chances of you going back become less and less and less.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other like thing that I want to like really emphasize there, like being nuanced in how you modulate and flowing, that kind of stuff, does not, and I'm really, really big on this, does not mean you're lazy. It does not mean you're not doing effective technique, and oh, they kind of got, okay, I'm gonna let them pass.
Yeah.
But like I think you grease the groove in bad habits that way. I make conscientious choices that I'm going to go light. And if they're doing good technique, I'm going to push them to continue doing good technique all the way through the pass. And then maybe I'll take it away from them at the very end. But I want to make sure that I'm not creating bad habits by going lighter. It's just I'm trying to make it useful for both parties involved. And like you're saying, if you're hurt and injured, you have an opportunity to expand your game. It's very easy in jujitsu to, we call them toads. You get good or kind of good at some things, and then if it goes outside of there, like, oh man, you're lost. And I think too many people have such an emphasis on like winning, that they go too hard, but they also limit their growth potential because they're so worried about looking foolish or losing a round or whatnot. And it's about a delicate balance of honing your A game and getting your B game to your A game, but also expanding to adjacent techniques and building out your blueprints and testing out different things. And like, I think you can have such a beautiful expression and expansion and continual learning. And I also think it's not, you go way out there and never actually hone in anything. So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah. No, it's important, and everybody's going to be a little bit different too, and how they adapt everything. And you got to have a little toughness too. That's the other thing is jujitsu's not for the weak-hearted, or you got to have a little bit of toughness. You got to know when to shake things off, and when it's a serious injury and you do need to take a little bit of time off, or when it's something you can definitely train through and adapt and become much better with. But someone like you, Dave, who's experienced so much success in competition, and somebody who's really, it seems like, have honed in their game to where, you got a good solid blueprint out there, and you just go and do your thing. What is up? Like, what is some of the ways you stay motivated, and also some of the ways you like set goals or anything like that for the future?
It's a good question. I think that, first and foremost, everyone's journey is going to be different. And that's one of the most important things is everyone's unique, and everyone, to their best of ability, find what works for them. Not only like how to show up and how to compete and activate well, but also how to manage the fallout if it doesn't go that well, or the high of the emotions if it does go well and whatnot. It's also about like, what is your why for competing? And this isn't, there's a lot of, overly masculine, just go out there and just run through walls and stuff like that. And I think that, that's totally fine for if that's what you want and that's what you need. But I think that kind of oversimplifies it, because it's kind of easy to glom onto. And so your why should be what speaks to you in that moment. So my reasons for competing over time have evolved, and what keeps me motivated, I'll say the tongue-in-cheek answer is leaderboards and submissions and stuff like that. But also, like, to me, competition sucks. Like, it's not fun. There's aspects that are, but the totality of it is not fun. Um, especially if there's travel involved, there's, financial, there's being away from my dogs and my family. If my wife's not going with me, there's just a lot of the nerves and the psychic energy all spent up in there. And you're like, why the hell am I in Fort Worth, Texas? And, and so on a lot of levels, it's a difficult thing, and that in of itself is motivation to do it. It's leaning into difficult things, because I think that a lot of people don't do enough difficult things.
Yeah.
And I like to keep doing that when it makes sense for my schedule and my life and everything else like that, because I feel like it's good for the soul. And there's no higher flow state than on the mat in a competition. It is this moment where time kind of just doesn't exist, and you're there. And the way that I compete, and I train like this a lot too, is like I almost metaphorically take this like third person, like I back off and I just let the animal loose. And I might direct him a little bit, but I let him do its thing. And to me, that is just a beautiful manifestation of the flow state. And it's really hard to get that in any other space to that
Oh, yeah.
magnitude. And so between like doing hard things and accessing flow state to the greatest degree, and it's nice to submit people. I don't know.
Yeah. Something about it, right?
There's something about
Let me ask you this. Do you think there can be a point to where people can become too addicted to jujitsu to where it can become a
Yes,
problem?
of course.
Yeah.
I think candidly, a lot of people are already there. I think then the number one area where I think it presents itself is they use jujitsu as therapy. And I think on some level, like, hey, it's really good to have an exercise process that works for you, that helps to get those endorphins or the frustration. Like I found that in wrestling, and I think I took it to a very large extent. I
Mhm.
don't think it became too much of a problem at that moment just because of like life situations and everything else like that. And I very much used it for a good thing. But I think in an adult life, like especially like kind of bringing back to your point of like injuries and stuff like that, a lot of times like there's a lack of having another outlet, and it's just jujitsu, and maybe it's hanging out with the homies too, but it's all like the node around jujitsu. And when you don't have that, you start to freak out and you start to like, like lose your shit. And
Yeah.
I think that people will train even when it's not in their best interest. And I think that's really where you find it to become a problem. Now, obviously there's some edge cases of people training in lieu of going to work and losing their job and all that other stuff. Yeah, of course, but I think that's the edge case. I think the biggest challenge with being addicted is that fulfilling that spiritual hole, or that a mental hole that a lot of people have in today's day and age. It feels like there's a lot of angst in society. There's a lot of angst in affording life and everything else like that. And it's very natural. And I think it's healthy to a degree, but I think people over rely on it. And so
Yeah.
like diversifying what brings you happiness, what brings you that sense of calm, and candidly, and a lot of people should do therapy. Like it's a beautiful thing to do, and it's good. Finding the right therapist and
Yeah.
working the right amount is so pivotal. Like I'll say, I am a much better human being, a much better husband, a much better friend, a much better father figure, and human being from doing therapy and putting the right work in and finding the right therapist. I had a good therapist at the time, and then it became not the right therapist, and I found another one. And I think that having that balance is really important. So to your point, yes, it can become a problem. I think there's ways to manage around it, because it can be a very powerful tool for someone to have a enriched life, because it's not just the physical output. It's not just you're constantly learning. There's the infinite permutations and so many different moves and the meta changes, but it's also like having friendships and having connections, and bringing people together from all walks of life and political leanings,
Right.
and thought process, socioeconomic. Everyone's on the mat.
Yeah.
That all that does not matter. It's we're all here for the same goal, and that's just really cool. And so I get why, and I think it's a very positive thing. But diversify in life too.
Yeah, well, it's like if you think of it like this, right? Everyone wants to be a part of a community, right? Of some sort, a loving environment, whether it be a nice, beautiful family or a church they go to, or, a group of friends they hang out with. Everyone's longing to surround themselves with whatever they're looking for with their community. And a lot of people find it, and what can happen is they're spending so much time with that community, they forget about that family at home, and
Mhm.
things go by the wayside. And you got the other hand of people who may have experienced addiction and other things in the past, maybe it drugs or whatever the vice is, and now they transfer that addiction for another, and that can also be where it becomes pretty dangerous for people. But David, I want to ask you, a lot of people are really into the no-gi jiu-jitsu. You see the UFC BJJ doing their thing with it, and, CJI is very successful, and, all the different no-gi platforms, ADCC, but, I feel like gi jiu-jitsu is getting left behind a little bit, and there's not as much big eyes on the gi side of jiu-jitsu. From your perspective, what do you think can be done differently, or what do you think can be changed to get that a little bit more notoriety, if anything?
I mean, I might challenge you that gi jujitsu is left on the wayside. I mean, there's something like 6 times or 10 times as many gi competitors in IBJJF, and ADCC hasn't exploded that much where even the opens, like they pull good numbers, but there's still the vast majority of competitors are still in the gi. Now, some of that is like children aren't allowed to do gi for a while until they're like a certain age and stuff like that. Now I get your question is around like the spectator part, and I'll get to
Yes.
that in a
Yeah.
second. So like I just want to be like, Master Worlds and Jiu-Jitsu Con had 14,000 people. This is gi, and the second biggest is Europeans, which had, some 9,000 or whatever people, individual competitors that are doing
Yeah.
it in the gi. And so there's still lots and lots of people that compete in the gi. And I think it's still very much fleshed out and stuff like that. Now, to your question around like spectator sport friendly and that kind of stuff, I mean, even no-gi is boring, like if
Yeah.
you're a casual observer, no-gi is boring. Gi is boring, where it's not very clear that, oh, him smash face, blood, he fall down.
Yeah.
Like that's like, if it's not simple for people to be able to watch, I think of this as a lot like hockey. If you're not at a hockey event, like you don't feel the buzz and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you don't
It's
know what's
different.
going on, besides when the goal happens, but if you don't have the eye for like where the puck might be or what's going on, like you don't know, and it's boring, it's weird, and the rules like come into play. So I think to like answer your question in a little bit more concise way, I think that the rule sets that will dictate spectator sports that are interesting, that are combat, whether it's no-gi jiu-jitsu or gi jiu-jitsu, or even wrestling, honestly, it needs to be not only what's happening, but it's also the commentators that can kind of help drive it home. I hear a lot of commentators are either too high level, or like they're just like the person that's just trying to like kind of keep the hype going and whatnot. And then there's a person that's really detailed and specific, and that's really great for people that are already into jiu-jitsu. I think there's a lack of like making it accessible and interesting and engaging enough to be able to like speak to the average Joe that has a inkling of what jiu-jitsu is, but not really. So I think
Yeah.
that's one part. And then another thing is like the rule sets, even in CJI, there's a lot of problems around like the stalling. And then they added in a 50K bonus for submissions and stuff like that. And I think that helped a little bit, but it's always going to be the first round is going to be a very tactical, round and stuff like that. I think that if they were to adopt not quite the quintet rule around stalling, because I think that's a little bit aggressive and stuff like that, but like wrestling's type of stalling, maybe not with like the giving up positions or whatnot, but clear, consistent, and uniformly applied stalling calls that encourage action, and also just taking away some of these like positions like that 50-50 that people just kind of spam and whatnot. But I don't think that gi jiu-jitsu is inherently less interesting than no gi jiu-jitsu. I think that you're having more of the interesting competitors in no-gi because there's platforms for them and
Right.
there's money for them. And so when your main attractors for gi jiu-jitsu that make any money are the crown, there's a lot of politics. It only happens so often, and there's not a whole lot of avenues for like the best, the most exciting type of jiu-jitsu athletes to be able to make a decent amount of money. Like money right now, all the money is in nogi, and so like you're going to get the better, not even necessarily technically better, but the better spectator based people there. UFC BJJ is an interesting model, and it does seem like they're trying to do a really good job of. And CGI did a really, really good job of this. The people that complained about a free YouTube stream of incredible matches and stuff like that, it's
Right.
like, you're never going to make everyone happy. And
No.
some matches are going to be boring. Some matches are going to be really interesting. And like, that's just kind of how it is. None of them are going to be the brutal tack it match at flag one where you're just on the seat of the edge of your seat the whole time through. And I think it's about educating the audience in a non-pedantic and in a way that's easy for them to understand. And some of it's going to just take time for it to become more and more mainstream. And you have people that are helping that along with big names. And that's not even just Craig Jones and whatnot, but it's also like people like when Mark Zuckerberg came out as training and stuff like that. He trains with my lineage, which is Dave Camarillo. My professor, Mike Prudencio, who gave me my black belt, got his from Dave Camarillo, know him very well. And you have someone like a Mark Zuckerberg or these other big names are going to be huge for the sport. And that will
John Wick.
John Wick. Yeah, he works with him as well. He's in the movie actually as a stunt director and combat coordinator. And having those more and more and making it very easy to understand is the key to having it be more accessible. Because I mean, even the UFC runs into this when they're in this grappling and maybe they're punching a little bit, but people like start booing and whatnot. It's a lack of understanding about the beauty of the sport. And on some level, that's always going to be the case. There's kind of a reason why wrestling is not that big. Now, I will say jiu-jitsu does a much better job of making jiu-jitsu accessible to the average person because you have belts, because you have age groups, because you have local competition and bigger competitions. There's an ability for people to kind of jump in where you're at. And so I think the more that this happens, that's going to pick up, jiu-jitsu. So I think in summary, just call stall calls regularly.
I also think this, like, you got to have personalities in the game. And, it sounds crazy, but those WWE storylines work for a reason. I think jiu-jitsu really blew up when, the Andre Galvao, Gordon Ryan slap happened. There's different things that can cause, a little bit of a stir, a little bit of a buzz, even if you don't know the sport. So I think that, you got to have personalities.
Do you want that? I don't know. So, hey, I get that like drama sells tickets and drama gets eyes on and stuff like that. And so like, I can see the fact that, there's a reason why Conor McGregor got, paid the most MMA fighters ever been because, he was selling 1 million pay-per-views. Even like John Jones in DC didn't sell 1 million pay-per-views. He did it like 4 or 5 times. And it's like, he bifurcates everyone into like, you either love him or hate him. Gordon Ryan is a similar. And so whenever you have polarizing characters that are big names and good, because if they're polarizing characters but they suck, you never hear of them. I do agree with that. I think all I would do is add a caveat to like still keeping it true to what we would want the sport to be presented as, because I don't want it to be a clown show and I don't want it to be this egomaniacal whatever. And if that's what it needs to be to like have it at the highest levels and whatnot, that's totally cool. It's not my lane anyway, so like that's totally fine. But I've always had a big problem with like shit talking each other and that kind of stuff. But, I know it drama sells. So
you got to have somebody invested at least. I feel like, somebody's got to be invested if they don't know what's going on, if they're not your average person. And you know, hopefully, like as a martial artist, obviously I don't want this turning into a clown show by any means, but you know, I do know that over time, jujitsu will keep growing and keep developing. And I think the talent alone, you know, with what you see people doing and these young competitors doing out there, like Mika Galvals and Baby Sharks, doing them at young ages on the biggest level stages. You know, there was a love story even. We're talking drama. We got, you know, the young lady that won the Olympics and Mika Galval, you know, given the kiss of a lifetime on this ADCC stage. You know, that's what we're talking about. You know, that's some Travis and Taylor stuff that we're
Yeah, we got
experiencing.
that's Amit Allure, one of the youngest gold medalist winners. She's from the Bay Area, actually, out
Yeah.
in Walnut Creek. And she recently announced that she's pregnant, so that's awesome. Good, congrats to them, and that should, I think it's going to be good timing for her to make a run at 2028 Olympics. Yeah, like those are great stories. You know, one other thing I was thinking about, I don't know if you've seen this new account, Ibjjf Rankings. They're like the unofficial. They use ELO ratings and stuff like that. Their whole mission is like to use like data backed rankings for the brackets and whatnot. Take that off to the side. One of the other things that they do really well lately is they've been highlighting interesting stories coming up to, you know, hey, the European nogis or nogi pans, and highlighting various different people from blues, purple, brown, all these other things, and kind of doing a deep dive and doing like some kind of like basically journalism. And there's not that much of that in America. And you get, you know, some on like specific high level people, or, you know, people that are noteworthy, but it's not like you know anyone coming up. Like most people are like, they don't know any purple belts that are really, really good, or brown belts, or fresh black belts. Like you can name a couple. And I think that's where you can see some opportunities also to increase the level of awareness, and also educate people along the way too. And that's going to help grow the sport, not just, you know, people doing it, but also people understanding it. And because you're going to have people that, you know, they're the partner of, or the mother of, or whatnot, that they want to learn, but if they ask the person, like, can't explain jujitsu
Yeah.
well, but maybe in like a quick little blurb article that might help them a little bit. And
Yeah.
it's also nice, like if you're, you know, you're a young up and comer, and you have, no one's going to know you about anything, but you're featured on, you know, a good little publication. That might be something that's really interesting to lean into as well.
Yeah, you know, I think back to like even UFC, like Ariel Helwani was covering, you know, small fighting events and UFC events back in the day, like, you know, to really get eyes on it and to talk about it. And he was probably one of the first MMA YouTubers out there, you know, to
Yeah.
really become big at it. And we got to have media and podcasts and different things to really spread the knowledge and, you know, things that people can listen to educate themselves. Even if they're not a grappler, they can listen to grapplers talk and understand a little bit about what we're talking about. And I think the more the merrier on that. I'm like Joe Rogan when it comes to that. I don't think there could be enough podcasts. I don't think there could be enough media coverage, YouTube channels. You know, there's plenty of space on the internet for everybody. But Dave, you know, you've done some pretty big things in the past with your competitions, but you've also done some big seminars, and that's what I want to talk about. And you got some seminars coming up, but also we were able to meet at the Backwoods BJJ retreat, and what an awesome experience getting to train with you. And I jumped right in the middle of it, you know, last minute, get out of the car, and you guys are getting ready for a session, and I got a lot of stuff out of that. And I tell you what, it was an amazing experience just being up there in the ambiance and the good vibes. But I want to hear your perspective on that, and also about some of the seminars you have coming up.
Yeah. You know, the Backwoods retreat is such a cool thing. One, I went to was it 6th through 8th grade. No, longer than that. I went through like 4 or 5 grades at Twain Harte. So it's in Twain Harte. So it's like kind of nostalgic going back. I'm like, oh, I used to go there and whatnot. So that part is really cool. And he just does this, Rob just does such a good job of like making it easy. It's very affordable for people. I think when I did it, it was like $300. You got room and board, you got food. They made food for you. You got snacks and stuff like that. And I mean, I went a little overboard in how many sessions I did. I did 5 sessions over the weekend. So I did 1 on Friday night and 3 on Saturday and 1 Sunday morning. So like probably a little bit of jujitsu overload. But like it's just really cool that everyone's there just vibing out, having a good time, just being surrounded by beautiful nature, just absolutely gorgeous nature. And one of the things that like I've done a fair amount of seminars, mostly local, but I've traveled a little bit for them, and some of them pulling in like 75 or 50 plus people and stuff. And those are always they're my favorite form of teaching and passing on my knowledge. There's just something about them, the energy and just seeing that many people and oftentimes friends coming from or new people and whatnot. One of the things that I've always ran into is like my blueprints, especially around my ankle lock blueprint, is so expansive because I was doing ankle locks as a white belt. So it's 12 years in the making, and I'm very much, I used to live and die by it, and then I learned, you can, move on from it and use it to sleep and transition to knee bars and stuff like that. But I feel like I've set up such an expansive blueprint that I could only go over like a small sliver in a seminar, and I was like, like I'd really like to be able just to expand the breadth, but also the depth, and have them cycle back and space repetition. I wanted to test out a lot of different things, and to me, that was really powerful. I learned so much, and I still felt like I could have been there for another 5 days, which is I guess is a testament to the depth of the blueprint, but also how I love teaching. So just being around people that are hungry, that they're open and willing to commit to such a crazy amount of jujitsu, and it's really rewarding too. Afterward, it was like a couple of them were like, I hit my professor with a toe hold, and he's like, where'd you learn that shit? You've never done any footsie before, and just hearing like people saying, like I'm implementing this game and whatnot. It's just like it's really humbling, and it feels really rewarding to go through there. And so I definitely want to do that again. I think it's just I like the mission that Rob's doing up there with, again, making it affordable, making it accessible for people, and just real easy. You don't have to worry about stuff. Everything's all taken care of. It's real chill. It's good to just wrap out. My wife did one in July where it's like all ladies, and she came back like in tears. She was just so grateful and so like overwhelmed with like how cool it is just to be able to like be there and pass on knowledge. So definitely big up to that. Couple seminars coming up Saturday. I have one in Los Banos. Good friend of mine, Craig Wallace, at Strike Fitness, is bringing me over. Of course, we're going to be doing some leg locks and stuff. I'll have some other ones coming up. I'll have one in One World probably in January, late January, and I'll be doing more. Now I'm going to be, this is, I mean, I already like mentioned this in posts before, but I'm no longer at Google as of Sunday. And so I'm going to be leaning in a little bit more towards teaching private lessons, some group lessons. I just did one last Friday, which was really fun up in Yuba City. And it's really nice to get a lot of the positive feedback, and I'll be trying to do a little bit more seminars. That's only going to be part of it. I'm not trying to be a full-time jiu-jitsu guy just yet. I will be working on a startup with a really good friend of mine. And then, just trying to get a little bit more mat time. I've historically only done like 2.5 times a week for years and years and years. And whether I'm too stubborn or too stupid. I just keep going out and competing, which is fun. But yeah, just I'm really excited about being able to hopefully get more and more seminars out there. And I try to make it as reasonable for the gym owners as possible. I don't want to, like, take from their coffers. I want it to feel good to everyone involved. And like I said, I really, really enjoy teaching seminars. It's just I like teaching classes and private lessons and whatnot, but there's something about a seminar that just feels really good. It feels fun to be, navigating through, trying to pass on some of the knowledge that I've accumulated over years and years and battle tested, obviously.
Yeah, and that's important that you're able to pass that on. But let me ask you this: how have you been able to retain that knowledge? Is there notes that you take? Do you type everything out a computer? Kurt Osander says it's all in the onboard computer in his head. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different learning techniques. How do you retain things?
I do not write things down. I do suggest people try it out because we've alluded or like spoken to this before. Is I think the most important thing is to find out how you learn and how you compete and what you need, and what works for your body, your game. Learning new things. You're not trying to learn this one thing that you're only going to see. Even if you do it exceptionally well, if you never get to it, like, it's useless.
Yeah.
And so I talk about a concept of adjacency. What is something adjacent to your game? So if you already have a half guard, okay, you do 2-3 things. Now you got a far side, straight arm bar. Now you got your Choi bar. Okay, that's adjacent to what you already have, and that can start opening up things. And so, for me, the way I learn, I don't want to, like, sound conceited or anything else like that. I'm a little bit of an enigma, and, like, my wife says this all the time, and she kind of gets frustrated with me. She'll send me a reel or a tech breakdown, and I'll, like, watch it, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then I'll do it the next time I train. That's not with everything. It's certainly not all, like, I'm not going to be able to break down like a crazy bolo variation or whatnot, but I'll take a back step in to some of the way that I progress through white belt and beyond. Is my instructor really let me do my thing, somewhat a little bit to a fault where he wouldn't, like, really give me things to work on. He's just, but a lot of it is, and this is how it works for me, is I work really well with pattern recognition. I work really well with, doing things and internalizing, like, back solving what worked, what didn't work, kind of why a little bit in my own mind. And that's like that. I have a very, very high processing speed, like my RAM is exceedingly fast, and then it'll start to consolidate that knowledge. And, like, one of my friends when I was early on, it's like, you're one of the few people that probably could do just open mats and be just fine. Now that's not completely true, but it is in large part true. And so for me, I've been very, very fortunate to not only have that as a little bit of a innate ability, but I've also cultivated that a significant amount. And so when I've been developing, what I try to do is I try to trust my instinct as much as possible and let my body, like I was saying, when I compete, I, like, kind of go into that third person,
Third person, yeah.
and stuff like that, and let it go. And I just kind of try to observe metaphorically or whatnot. And then only when I run into challenges, when my natural response runs into consistent problems, do I troubleshoot and try to, like, work and refine that. And so a lot of it for me and how I learn was just letting my body learn and codifying as I went along. And then it just gets reinforced because it's what my body already naturally wants to do. Now, I do know that there's other, schools of thought, and also, different learning styles where it's like, listen, tell me the system, tell me how I need to go through it and the mind map and follow along and get the
Yeah.
hours of repetition. And there's zero wrong with that. It's mostly finding out what works for you. So to answer your question directly of how I've retained it all, is I've done it for so many years, and it is ingrained into my game. I could step back, and I'll do this. I'll work on passing a lot. I'll force myself to work on, I don't like to work on one move. I like to work on a blueprint node that I'll try to get to, but I'm not going to force it, but I'll try to get to, and then I'll explore from there. So say I'm trying to pass half guard, I'll try to get to the half guard or whatever it might be, and then work the different scenarios. I might have an optimal path I'm trying to work on, but I don't want to force anything. But you might just want to be that drill 100 times that that leg drag entry or whatever it might be, and it's just about finding what's important to you. So I've done this for so many iterations and I feel very comfortable. And then the other thing that I think is really important, a lot of people are either really good athletes, sometimes they're really good coaches without being very good athletes. There's very few people that are both. And a lot of it's about empathizing with who you're talking to, not just one-on-one, but also a whole group, and being able to say, like, I'm a, now 190-pound dude that's pretty strong, that has a lot of skill in a certain area. Like, that's not going to be accessible to every single body type, every single person. And so I try to really make modifications, and I try to also teach things that are going to be assimilatable for most people. And then, like, as I go around, I might see certain body types, or I might see people struggling a little bit, and I'll try to make adjustments to them. Now I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think that, it's when you spend a lot of time in these spots, it's not like I just learned an ankle lock and like one or two escalation points. Like, I've lived in there so many times, and I've been very fortunate to be able to absorb, but then think about how can I pass those learnings on to other people. And that's where I think it codifies even more, because there's something about teaching that really makes you think about it on a deeper level, and then you can apply it even better afterward. And so, because even if it was earlier where someone's like, hey, like, what are you doing with this? I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. That helps it reinforce, and that helps it reinforce. And like, people have problems. And so, oh, I make this adjustment, and that helps it reinforce over time.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. It's important. The way you explain it, though, it's a unique, different style, but you have to reinforce those different good habits and good things that you're doing on the mats, and it's just unique. Jiu-jitsu has such a different identity based on who's doing it, right? Everyone has their unique style or their certain way they learn, and then you apply all these personality types, and then you get them all in one room together, and then you're talking about what the beauty is in jiu-jitsu. And truly, it's amazing, the sport, the evolution of the sport. I'm excited for the future, because it's just getting started, man. And well, after we're gone, there's going to be generations upon generations spreading the knowledge, and hopefully it gets better and better and better, and they can pass on some of the great stuff that we've showed them over the years. But Dave, in wrapping this up, I got one more question for you, and I want to know, what would be the message your current self would give to your white belt self in starting jiu-jitsu? What would be the one piece of advice or the one message you could give to yourself?
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier of like, of course I'm going to dance around the answer, but I think that, when people say, oh, don't have an ego in jiu-jitsu, that's unrealistic. But being able to set aside the ego for certain times and stuff like that, I think you need an ego in jiu-jitsu, honestly. I think, like, if you don't have at least a little bit of an ego, like, you're probably not going to show up again and again. Like, there's a little bit of like having an ego and having some pride in yourself, and then like your journey and being like remembering where you were 6 months ago or a year ago and be like, I would torch that guy so bad.
Yeah.
And so I think having a little bit of an ego is good. Setting it aside in healthy quantities, and just being a little bit intelligent about how you train and making sure that you're taking care of your body. But like my answer to this is, like I was saying before, is learning how to modulate, learning how to flow, and learning how to really extract the most out of the rules by it's a concept that I've talked about a little bit in one of my stories in a Q&A, and I'll probably do a little bit more on this later, but I have a concept called riding the ridge. And I think the power of this, especially when you're just strictly better than the other person, like you could just dunk on them and highlight reel them and stuff like that. And sure, do that a little bit because like it's fun. But where you want to help them get better because they're going to help you get better by getting more challenging over time. And so the ridge is like where we're just at kind of a standstill. And so if I'm just on this side of the ridge, they're gaining success by doing good technique, and I'm defending enough where they have to continually to do good technique until they get, the pass or the submission or whatnot. And then riding the ridge on the other side is I'm doing just enough to stay ahead. I'm passing, I'm letting them, recover, but I'm still, okay, I get that pass, I solidify, but they've gotten some good looks of almost retaining the ground, or almost getting it back or whatnot. And so I'll often go back and forth of riding the ridge, or I'll stay just on one side or just on the other side. But I think if I were to like really pass that idea on to white belt David, I think I would just speed up my already intensely fast path. It took me a little under 6.5 years to get the black belt. So it was already very, very quick. But I think that would have sped up that process. And I think it would also allowed me to have more training partners, because I was like, again, I was never really dangerous, but I was like, difficult to train with. And so there were quite a few people that were like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so I think it would have allowed me to have a lot more fruitful and engaging and beneficial to both parties roles from an early age. And I think it also would have highlighted some of the areas where like I allow myself to learn, I allow myself to build this game, but then I need to go back and backfill the areas where it's just like, you have your unconscious incompetence. You just don't know what you don't know. And there's these, even when I was a brown belt, there's a couple like very basic fundamentals. I never did a fundamentals class. I think the first one I did was 6 months ago. So like the very like fundamentals that I needed to go back and like, hey, this is a problem each time it happens. Okay, let's like address that. I think I would have identified those a little bit earlier and that kind of stuff. So I think riding the ridge and gaining a little bit more modularity in how I trained would be what I would suggest.
Yeah. And, it's been awesome just getting to catch up with you, getting to know you a little bit more. I've seen you in the competition scene, man, and you're dangerous out there. You just go in and it's quick work for you. And I've noticed you don't like to be out there too long. It's like go in, get out, and get your medal, and you're on to the next one. So,
yep.
I commend you for that, man. I wish you nothing but success in the future. I always like to give my guests just a couple minutes for any shout outs, any sponsors, anything like that. But truly, again, thank you, Dave, for being a part of this. If you're in the area, in the Los Banos area this weekend, get out there, try to train with Dave. He's an amazing coach. You're going to get a ton out of the seminar. And I'm not just saying that. I literally pulled stuff out and I've been hitting knee bars on my training partners left and right. So, it really does work. And, he's a attention to detail person. So he'll come by, he'll make sure you're doing great and give you all the details you're going to need. But, Dave, just take a couple minutes. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's like I said, it's an honor and a pleasure to spend the time. I appreciate having a good conversation, passing on a few little tidbits. Hopefully people found this engaging. And if you're still here, then I presume as much. I would like to thank my sponsor who's been with me for many years now, Knox Gear, local to the Bay Area. Just been so gracious for so many years. And even when my house burned down and like I lost basically all my gear, he heard boom, big box, 2 days later at my door, so I can keep training and everything else like that. So super, super appreciative of them. Mogo Training, who is a really good friend of mine, Morgan Flaherty, who's right now in China. He's a strength and conditioning coach for the Olympic and world Chinese wrestling team, doing really good things. He's my strength and conditioning coach. I've been his longest standing client. I've known him since college, and just a really great person to be able to work with and bounce ideas off of and everything else like that. My wife, Lauren, who you had on the podcast, Lauren Sachs, been around with me through much of this journey for the last 5 or 6 years now. And, she's such an inspiration in large part, I think, because we do learn and operate and, do a bunch of things differently. It's really nice to have a big perspective, things to challenge my own thought process of how things work and stuff. And so it's really nice to be able to have someone there. She's also a great coach. She leads up the kids program at Black Sheep now. And it's just nice to be able to go compete with her and also just geek out on jiu-jitsu. Not as much as you might think. We don't train as much as you might imagine, but we do still try to when our cups are full enough for that. Our brand right now we're launching already is Team Chaos Jiu-Jitsu. We have a YouTube channel. I'm sure you can drop it in the link. Team Chaos Jiu-Jitsu. We'll be putting in demos, technique breakdowns. We'll be doing more longer form, podcast-ish, not actual podcast, but just speaking for a little bit longer. And then also instructionals we'll be putting out there as well. Also, one of the people that I've met along the jiu-jitsu journey recently, who's been a really big impact, not only on like jiu-jitsu, but just as a mentor in life as well, as Dave Myer. He's one of the original Dirty Dozen black belts, first black belt adult medalist as an American. Just a really nice dude. He has a nonprofit, just doing a lot of really good work. He created a podcast called the Ageless Warrior Lab, which is set to really talk about like a lot of the principles that he's learned in business and in martial arts and melding them together and pass along, and also some just epic stories of his, because he's been around for forever and is underneath Hagen Machado and all that kind of stuff. So it's really been great to get to know him. I'm really proud of him for putting out the podcast and everything else like that. And yeah, I mean, it's, everyone at One World, when I came up, that's when I went white to black, and those were the OGs. And now I'm at Black Sheep. It's just such a great gym to train at. If you're in Marin County and you're looking for a place to train, even if you're just trying to pop by for some good training, feel free to reach out to me or step by. Just really warm, welcoming people and really good jujitsu. So, I just want to say again, thank you for your time. I know we've been bouncing around and haven't gotten to this but until now, but it feels like a good time too. It's like a new chapter in my life. I'm looking forward to. I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll work out. I'm nervous, but also really excited. And I'm hoping that jiu-jitsu can be a little bit more of a percentage of my life, and having the ability to talk about it is invigorating, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been just a pleasure to have you on. And, like I said, getting to meet you and getting to talk to you over the time, and even spitting back and forth between CJI. We were going back and forth between some matches and stuff like that. It's just awesome, man. And your knowledge is great. And it's just a pleasure to know you. Again, go check out Dave Mitchell. Find him on Instagram. Get him out to your academy for a seminar. He's doing great things out there. Again, you could follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where you get your podcasts. Check us out. And again, thank you to our partners, Butterfly X and Spar Bar Soap. Go check out their Instagram pages, their websites. Use our promo codes and get 10% off of your order. Again, thank you, listeners, for downloading. This has been another great episode of Grapplers Talk. This is Dave, and we are out.
This is Grapplers Talk.